Okay, so everything you always wanted to know about continuous integration, but were afraid to ask, beautiful title, by me, Alek Sharma, developer evangelist. And, is this working? Yes, it is. I have evangelist in quotes because I want to make a point here. I can't even see the slides. Okay, there we go. This is an advocate, right? I almost introduced myself as a developer advocate because this is Professor X. How many people have seen X-Men? Yes? Raise your hand. Yeah? Good. Wonderful in the back there. Yeah, you've seen it. You love it. Wonderful. Professor X is an advocate. He advocates on behalf of mutant kind, right? Like he's advocating for peaceful resolution of conflict. But an evangelist is more like this, Magneto, hovering 5 feet off of the ground, using magnetic forces to convince people of his goals. So I'm going to try and just walk a fine line here, right down the middle of an advocate and an evangelist. I feel like advocates listen more than they push. So the story thus far, this is where I have worked in the past. I started at Disney right out of college. This is why you should listen to me, by the way. That's why I'm telling you this story. So I started at Disney. Then I went to Dev Bootcamp. That's an old logo. Do we have any people from coding bootcamps in the audience? Raise your hand if you ever went to a coding bootcamp. Raise your hand. Be proud. Raise it high. Cool. Great. And where you go? Nice, nice. There's some other oh, you were talking earlier. I shouldn't have seen that. Whoops. Okay. Blue Otter is a small consulting shop in Rails. That's where I went after Dev Bootcamp. Soch, some of you might have heard of that as well. That went out of business. Cool. And then Postmates, where I was right before CircleCI. So what does CircleCI do? How many people know what CircleCI does? Raise your hand. And you should, because technically you're a user if you're here. Or you just work here, which I think most people in the audience just work at CircleCI. Cool. I was told by our designer that I wasn't allowed to put our logos up rotating at this part because I used to have them rotating. So I fixed that problem, and it's a much more mature presentation now. But what is it, right? Continuous integration, that's what we're here to talk about today. What is CI? I looked it up for you like a good developer. I just Googled it. This is the 8th result by Martin Fowler. I'm just going to read it to you because I like reading things aloud. Continuous integration is a software development practice where members of a team integrate their work frequently, leading to multiple integrations per day. Each integration is verified by an automated build, including tests, to detect integration errors as quickly as possible. Wonderful. But you know what? That's it. That's the end of the presentation. I just defined it for you. Just kidding. Isn't this fun? Is it? I don't know. A picture with words is worth 10,000 words. So let's describe this in a little bit more detail. So I can't move from this spot. I was going to go over and just motion to and gesture at all these things in the chart, but I can't see it quite well. So I'm going to look here. So what we have here for continuous integration is we've got 3 developers. We're all developers in the audience for the most part. What you're doing is you're pulling changes, you're pushing code. That's the cycle, that's the way it goes. You push it up to GitHub, you push it up to Bitbucket, some sort of version control. You have a build server or a test server running your tests, right? It's encapsulated there. And you have a series of automated tests, a test suite that runs on your code to make sure everything's working just fine. You'll get notifications either through email, maybe through GitHub if you actually are integrated properly. And then, depending on whether they pass or they fail, you will change your code and continue that cycle, okay? That's the gist of it. But I'm going to use a metaphor to describe it instead, because that's really what this presentation is all about. The main thing I want to focus on today is that people are practicing continuous integration in real life, and you just didn't know it yet. So I'm going to fumble this French title here at the top here, but I'm going to try it anyway, okay? You ready? Bear with me. I don't speak French. L'intégration continue. I think that sounded French. It's good enough, right? Great. This is from Ratatouille. There's a scene where Remy is adding ingredients to the soup, okay? So the gist of it is this. You're adding ingredients to a pot. If the taste test passes, then you keep cooking, right? Otherwise, fix the soup. So he actually walks by this pot of soup, adds an ingredient, continues testing the soup, and it still tastes bad, so he keeps coming back to it. So that's how I think of it, as basically just cooking. All right, I have a pretty good grasp of the concept now, but why are you people so into it, right? Why are we so into it? So here are 8 very good reasons. This is Daft Punk, by the way. And I've translated them for you. So work it harder means you're going to be making more features with continuous integration, right? You're making it better. Your quality of your code is going to go up. You're going to be doing it faster. You're going to be iterating more quickly. Makes it stronger. It's actually more stable code. More than ever, there's no translation for that. Nothing funny. Hour after, you're going to fix bugs less than an hour after they happen. You fix them immediately. That's the beauty of continuous integration, because you know exactly where to look. And our work is continuous. Now for some requirements. I think this just looks like a Cards Against Humanity card to me, except the only difference here is it's a party game for me where you sit and listen to me. I didn't know what to put there, so I put the logo. There can be only one place you test your code. This is really crucial. These are the requirements now for continuous integration, right? I told Garrett, I don't know where he is, the AV guy, that I was going to do a Highlander reference at some point, and here it is for him. So I don't know where he is, but I hope he's enjoying it. So there can be only one environment where you integrate all the pieces of your code, right? All these microservices, all of this has to go into one spot, and the tests need to be running in that same environment as well. That's a crucial thing. Get a init. That's just a, I guess that's just a tree. I don't know what I was thinking there. Those are feature branches forking off of that lightning there. Automate your workflow, okay? Instead of this Rube Goldberg machine of all the things you would have to do to get your build going, right? You might have to install dependencies, compile some files, move things to other directories, load your schema, seed your database. Instead of all that, you need to have that running in a single line, right? So that's what's happened here. Don't look at this too closely because I actually couldn't parse what was happening in this Rube Goldberg machine. I don't know where it starts. I don't know what the trigger is. But just trust me, automate your workflow. Test the limits of your code. You need a proper test suite, right? You need a good test suite to actually, for continuous integration to even be a thing, right? Continuous integration means nothing without tests. This is Arnold Schwarzenegger. I expected some laughs, maybe not any. Great. So the key piece about this is that you need a good combination of unit tests that are actually testing functional pieces of your code, and then you need integration tests that are strengthening like all of the points of interaction between those. Make sense? I'm going to harp on this a lot. The tests are the crucial piece. Without tests, really continuous integration just does nothing for you. You actually have to be testing and have that robust coverage. Commitment issues. It's another great metaphor coming up for you all. Since you didn't recognize Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'm going to describe these celebrities to you as well. That's Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt. So why do I have them up here? Martin Fowler, also a wonderful couples therapist, has said conflicts that stay undetected for weeks can be very hard to resolve. And what that means is that you should be committing early and often in your code, because continuous integration ultimately is just about communication. And so why do I have them up here? Is that if you discover that your partner is doing something that, wait, let me rewind. Say something in your partnership bothers you, right? Maybe your girlfriend does something that annoys you, eats cans of tuna at 3 a.m. That's fine, actually. 2 a.m. is, yeah. Ugh. And if you find out later, right, there's going to be a merge conflict where you actually are just having an argument in your house, right? So if you know about these things enough in advance, then you're not going to actually get into any sort of argument about that. And the same thing is true for code, right? I worked at Soch, right, and we had a 2-week sprint cycle there, release cycle. And at the end of 2 weeks, we would deploy. We would try and just integrate everything that we had worked on, all the features that we had worked on. Well, surprisingly, when we went to actually integrate all those things, we discovered integration issues, right? So if we had just communicated properly, we wouldn't have ended up like Brangelina here. Next rule is, if it ain't broke, then good, because you should always fix it right after it breaks. That's the whole point. The master branch should always be clean, right? That's the big thing here. That was a Team Fortress 2 reference as well. Keep the build fast. For a while here, I had Groundhog Day up because it was a better example of a feedback loop, but I have Dr. Strange up here to be current, and I don't know if it is, but I'm looking at the faces here, and I am not seeing any sort of recognition, so maybe we haven't seen that. We have. Brian's nodding to me. That's good. He introduced himself to me before this talk. That's how I know his name, not just because I've stalked him. Great. Anyway, in Doctor Strange, he encounters Dormammu, and he goes into a 10-minute feedback loop. The key here is to keep the build fast, right? The faster your build is, the more quickly you can move through things. So in Groundhog Day, he has a day-long loop, and each time that he goes through that day, he can try different things, right? And figure out what's going on. If you don't have a short feedback loop, you can't actually fix things really quickly. So this goes back to the whole Daft Punk thing as well. We're trying to iterate quickly, and that means you need to keep the build fast. All right, use clones for testing. This is your CI server, okay? And it should match production as much as it can because they're clones, right? It doesn't have to match local dev. We don't care about that. Your local environment can be very different. It doesn't matter. But the whole point here is that the tests that are running in your CI server, that environment should match production as much as it can. Okay, cool. So I'm kind of at the end of the requirements for continuous integration. If continuous integration and continuous deployment, or delivery in this case, if it's so great, why isn't everyone doing it? Colossal iceberg, the other less pleasant meaning of CI. What we have here at the top is being continuous, right? That's just the tip of it. But becoming continuous is actually the problem here. So now I'm going to get into some of the reasons why people can't actually implement continuous integration on their teams. There is no I in continuous integration. There actually are quite a few, but the point is that there's other letters too, and the I's have to work with those other letters. This slide is about teamwork. So what do I mean by that? Is that you need to be working with members of your team. You can't have cowboy coders producing spaghetti code. You actually have to have complete buy-in from all members of your team in order for continuous integration to work. This is really what I'm talking about when it comes to DevOps culture as well. Everyone has to be writing tests. Everyone has to be equally involved and on board with continuous integration as a concept in order for it to be implemented. If you've got one outlier who's just doing their own thing off in their own world, not writing tests, that's going to make the whole thing backfire. Fear of change. This is a famous art piece called QA Engineer Mere Moments After Learning What Continuous Integration Is by Edvard Munch. The scary thing about continuous integration is that it does away with the need for some roles, right? If you have a QA team, they're going to be scared by what's going on with continuous integration, because a lot of this is just automated, right? So no longer are you manually testing, you're actually doing a lot of this automatically. That's honestly, I think, the biggest reason why more people are not adopting continuous integration. Once they get over that hump, that fear of change, then it becomes sort of a no-brainer. But testing takes too long. That's a common complaint, right? You don't want to start writing tests now. Well, the guilt of screwing up takes longer than writing tests in the short term as well. I actually looked this up, and they did test the Titanic. They took it on test runs, but only for 2 days, and then they launched it. So I guess it takes more than 2 days. Cool. Shameless plug, avert your eyes. I'm going to talk about specific features of Circle CI right now that help with all the things that I've described about continuous integration. You can SSH directly into your commit build to debug. So what that does is as you're encountering errors, it speeds up your entire feedback loop. You can hop directly into the machine to figure out what's going on rather than rely on error logs. There's inferred configuration per language and framework, right? And this is not true for 2.0 for now, which is something that we're working on. But for our existing setup, if you are using conventional setups for your languages or frameworks, if you're using Rails or something like that, then we will infer a lot of the common settings for your code, and you won't have to do any sort of additional configuration. You'll spin up clean, isolated environments for each build. So everything is existing in its own separate little world. It's this parallel universe. And that's just great because you don't have to worry about cruft building up in between builds, anything like that. You can really rely on a clean, just from scratch environment that's spun up for each test build that goes out. Then you can use containers to actually parallelize that whole process. So if your build is taking too long, go back to Dr. Strange, that feedback loop. If it's taking too long, you can actually spread that across a number of containers. And if your repo is open source, then we actually give you 4 free containers. And so that's just a nice little feature, pretty generous. And the last thing, but not least, is that all of this rests in a YAML file. This is a configuration file. It's just a YAML file where we put all of our configuration. For 1.0, we have these divided into different phases, the build, test, deploy process. For 2.0, it's a little bit more fragmented, and we can open that up for questions if you guys have questions about that.